Today's video is a collection of over 20 DIYs for Easter and spring home decor. I hope that you enjoy this video. There is lots of things here on a budget, whether it's from Dollar Tree, Dollar General, thrift stores, clearance finds. I'm going to tell you where you can find things on a budget and make some cute things for your home decor, whether it's tier tray, shelf sitters, signs, you name it. I have a little bit of everything in this video. I hope that you enjoy it. Let's get started.
All right, guys, so for this first one, we are going to take this sign from Hobby Lobby. I picked it up on clearance. I think it was under $2, but you could use just like a board you have on hand or a sign from the Dollar Tree, but this worked out perfect for me. I'm going to take off the sawtooth hanger and pull out any staples, and we're just going to clean this up a little bit. We're going to sand down the surface. We're going to sand down the holes from the staples, sand down where I took off the tag, because this side is actually going to be the front for this project. And once everything is sanded, we're going to fill in all the holes and gaps with lightweight spackling from Dollar Tree. Once that dries, you're going to sand it down again and smooth it out. All these steps may or may not be necessary depending on what you use for your base. And then we're going to give the front a coat of Waverly chalk paint in the color Elephant. And then we're going to go in with white. The dark color first just kind of helps cover up all this pattern and words. Even though this is going to be the back of the sign, I still want to make sure that it looks completed and finished. So now once I've got all of my white paint on with all of the coverage I want, I think I did a couple of coats, I'm going in with some apple barrel acrylic paint in the color Burnt Umber, and you dry brush by just putting a little bit of paint on, wiping a lot of it off, and then just dry brushing to give like a distressed look. And now we're going to move on to our mason jar sign. This is from the Dollar Tree. It just comes off pretty easily here, although it does kind of go flying on me here. I took the screws out and then used the scraper tool, and there it went. But yeah, there was just a little bit of hot glue underneath there, which I'm scraping off, that was holding it on. You don't necessarily have to take this off, but I just think it's easier to work with when I'm not worrying about getting anything on that little piece there. So once again, we're going in with Waverly chalk paint in Elephant. Then we're going to go in with the color Celery from Waverly as well. But as I was doing this, I felt like the words were still coming through. So there you can see I like sanded it down a little bit, hoping that would help. So now I'm going in with Celery, and it just was still showing up. I could have peeled off the paper. I probably should have just sanded it better before I got started, but hindsight's always 20/20. So once I got going in this, you can see I could just still kind of see the writing. So I'm going in with that lightweight spackling, and I'm going to do a thin coat, just kind of pushing it in there, and it actually filled in. It was actually grooves. It wasn't raised. So I did that and then let that dry, sanded it off, and then gave it another coat of the color Celery, and it gave a completely finished look. So there's another tip and trick if you're having trouble with it. So now I'm going to just take off the little hanger on the back. I could have taken that off in the beginning, but I was actually using that to kind of hold my sign while I painted it, but I don't need it for this project, so we're going to take that off, and I'm saving that as well because you never know in the future. And now I'm taking some white stickers. These are from Hobby Lobby that I picked up on clearance a while ago, but you could use a rub-on transfer, you could do words, you could do a design, you could paint a different pattern on, but I'm just going to put on the word joy, and then I'm going in with that Burnt Umber again, and we're going to dry brush over the whole thing. Right now I'm going to emphasizing the edges, and then we're going to do the whole thing over the words. Try to blend it all in a little bit more so that it's not looking like stickers. So that's kind of the point of this here. And now we're going to attach the metal top of what's supposed to be the top of the mason jar back on with these little screws. And then I'm going to go in with more of that Burnt Umber on top of the metal and just once again make that look kind of old and blend in with the rest of the sign. And then once it's completely dry, I do put some Mod Podge over the whole thing. I like using Mod Podge on my projects because I feel like it seals everything in. You don't have to worry about paint scraping off, especially on things like metal, but I pretty much do it on all of my projects. So once everything is dry, the sign, the mason jar, all of that, I'm taking these floral picks that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and we're just going to clip off a couple of sprigs, and you can usually move the flowers or leaves up and down on the stem and like reposition them to where you want them. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. and we're just making a little floral arrangement, holding it up to see, make sure it's how I like how it looks, make sure I like how it looks. Got tongue-tied there. And now we're just going to use some hot glue, and I just keep putting the sign back over to make sure all of the florals are where I want them, putting some hot glue and then holding them in place kind of flat up against the sign until everything's how I want it, and then putting some hot glue on the bottom and the top. Because of the stems, they don't really, the whole mason jar does not lay flat, but I'm just putting a good amount on the top and bottom, placing that, trying to make sure it's somewhat centered, and that is all I did. Oh no, that's not true. I added a little bit more hot glue. You can't really see what I'm doing here, but I couldn't get a good angle. Just down in the top, just to make sure everything was secured nice and good. And I love how this sign came out. I think it's really cute, and I can't wait to decorate with it. All right, so for this one, we are using this little house piece. This was from Hobby Lobby. I bought it on clearance, way marked down, but you will find similar things at Dollar Tree as well. And these flower stickers from the Dollar Tree. So these have a pretty good stickiness to them, but I am going to use some hot glue just to make sure that it stays on. And we're just going to glue these all over the front of the house, just in whatever design that you want. You could also just do this on a sign if you don't have one of the house-shaped pieces. The same concept would work on other shapes, obviously. And now we're going to just go in and give a good coat of white Waverly chalk paint. I actually do 2 coats. I do get the edges as well, even though they're already white, but just so that everything kind of looks cohesive and we have the same shades and finishes and all of that. So I'm trying to do a really good coverage, get around all of the edges, but then wipe away any excess so that it's not like goopy and globby. Are those proper like crafting terms? We don't want any globs of paint around the edges of the flowers. So once that's all dry, we're going to mix some Waverly chalk paint in the color Celery with some Waverly wax. Now I am mixing it with this to tint it because I only have the clear wax, but I'm learning that that's not totally a bad thing because you can just mix it with paint and give you a tinted color. Now I'm just going to mix this all together, go in with a stencil brush and really go in and work in all of those grooves around the flowers. Wanted to add some more wax in here. And I kind of forgot when I first started doing this that I'm going to brush it on and wipe it off, but ultimately I remembered before I was done. But we're going to really emphasize the ridges on the flowers, but then I am going to go in with a little bit across the whole thing, including the sides, just to bring that color in throughout the whole thing. And then we're going to go in with a paper towel and like buff off and wipe off the excess on the whole thing, but really on the flowers. So what you're kind of left with is that color in the grooves, and it really just helps them stand out and pop. And I just love how this looks. And again, this is like a piece with some detail, but it's also a neutral piece with like no words on it because I love words, but I feel like I have so many things with the words. And I love this, will just be a great little shelf filler piece. And then once again, I'm going in with some Mod Podge because I just like to coat everything with Mod Podge. And that is all that there is for this one. I love how it came out. I think it's really pretty. All right, so starting off, I've got this bird. This is from the Dollar General. They are usually $1, but I'm fairly confident I picked this one up on clearance for like 10 cents. Dollar General clearance after seasonal stuff or after season stuff is great finds. And I'm just painting that with some Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. Mine is a little bit thinned out because I've had to put a little bit of water at the bottom because, well, I'm at the bottom and it's older and it's thicker. So it's not a super, I think I did 2 coats with it because it was a little bit thinner, but that's okay. And we are going to then go in with some clear wax from Waverly, and I'm tinting it with, or mixing it with some Waverly chalk paint in the color Elephant. Now, I was thinking I may have done my ratios off. I feel like I should have done less paint, more wax, but it works out fine in the end. I'm brushing it on pretty thick, and then I'm using a paper towel to wipe it off. It was initially a little bit darker than I wanted, so I just really worked the paper towel to wipe it off and just kept going until I got the desired look. I love these little birds because they have so much texture, and so I just wanted to bring that texture out. but mute it down a little bit for my decor. But you, of course, could do this any color you wanted, and you could use a colored wax if you wanted as well. I thought about using my antique wax, but I didn't. I went with this. So wiping it on, brushing it on, wiping it off, and you can see here I'm just pressing a little bit harder in some areas, just really wanting to highlight all of the texture. And then I've got this candle, I don't know, holder, pedestal, something or other, and a terracotta pot. The blue base is actually from Hobby Lobby, and I picked it up on clearance. You could see it was a little bit chipped. It was after season, and I paid, I don't know, 20 cents for it. I think I paid less than that. I got like 3 of them because it was so cheap. Anyways, I'm using some super glue gel, and I was trying to use my hot glue gun, and I was not figuring it out. I've had this one for years and haven't been able to figure it out. I figured it out later in the video, but at this point I wasn't. So I'm just going in with some super glue gel, and I was trying to figure out how long it's supposed to take before it holds, and I moved on a little too quickly. You'll see in a second. But then I'm going to go in with some Mod Podge. I'm using the dishwasher safe one just because that's what I had around. And you can see it popped off. And the danger of that was if I grabbed it with my hand, I got super glue gel on my fingers. But I had to keep moving because I was like, the Mod Podge is going to be streaky and clumpy if I don't keep doing it. I'm doing the Mod Podge so that the paint will adhere better to the ceramic base here. Anyways, then I'm going in with a little bit more super glue, and we're going to weight it down to let it fully dry. You can see I kept wrapping my paintbrush from the Mod Podge in some plastic wrap, and that's just so that I didn't have to completely wash it in between. That was keeping it from drying out, and that worked really well. And then I'm going in with more of the Waverly Chalk paint and plaster. I did a couple coats on the whole thing because I was wanting to give it a good base coat. And then I'm going in with some greens and a brown. I use a little bit of the gray paint that was on the bird. And guys, I'm going to take you through the process. So I wanted a really weathered, old pot looking piece that looked like it had just been out in the garden for a ton of time, and a bird comes and makes its home. So at first here, it looks like I'm going for some type of camo look. I was dotting it on, smudging it, smearing it, wiping it, blending it. And at first I just thought, oh my gosh, what did I do to this thing? I'm going to have to start over again. I went with the greens because of moss and things like that growing up on it. It's going to be okay in the end. I actually really, really like how it turned out. But this went through a little bit of a journey, this whole process. So I decided I needed to lighten it up, so I went back in with some plaster, but just did a dry brush on the whole thing. And this is really sped up. I know my hand's moving crazy here, but this portion of the video would have been very long if I didn't do that. And at one point I was trying to layer too quickly. Things were not dried in between. So I felt like I was just destroying everything. Anyways, I pull out my hairdryer. I have a low cool temp setting on my hairdryer, and that's what I usually use to dry paint. And we're just going to build and build, brush, wipe, brush, wipe. I did go in with some green and, no, I think brown in a couple spots that I went thicker, and I just dabbed it with the paper towel instead of wiping it because I wanted some darker spots. I wanted rusty, mossy, really old. So I'll show it to you at the end. And then I just put a little napkin in the pot to fill it in a little bit, and then I just made a rough nest with the moss. I did not glue this. I did not even attach this to the top. I just set the bird on top, and I thought this was really cute. And here is my little bird nest that made its home in an old rustic pot from the backyard, and I think I got the look that I was going for, even though it was a little journey to get there. And this item I found at the Dollar General. It was only a quarter. They had all of their Christmas stuff for only 25 cents. After Christmas clearance is excellent at Dollar General. Actually, after season, any holiday season stuff is excellent. So I'm going to do a little DIY with this. I have some faux leather from the Dollar Tree. This is in the color white, as you can see. So I'm just tracing out a piece to cover the front. I was going to paint it, but it's raised and stuff. The galvanized metal is raised. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to cover it. This was like a perfect solution. And we're going to trim this down to size. I wanted to get it like exact because I didn't want to see any of the metal coming coming out on the sides or anything. But we're going to just trim this down. And then I was so excited to find these beautiful rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree. I have not found new ones in a long time. And they only had one pack of these, but I did pick them up. And we're going to use this whole sheet in today's video, but not in this DIY. I ended up getting 3 DIYs out of this sheet. And so I'm just cutting out what I want to put on here. And then I'm going to cut out some of the smaller pieces. You're going to see, we're just going to fill it in. And I could have just done it straight like from the sheet, but I wanted to be able to use the whole thing and use pieces of it on other DIYs. So I didn't want like half of the flowers to be cut off on this piece, if that makes sense. So I'm using a little scraper tool to rub on this. I had a little trouble with it this time, and I don't know if it's because of the tool I used or because it was the faux leather, because they transferred much easier on my other DIYs, but it did all transfer just fine. A popsicle stick actually is what I switched to for the other ones, and it worked better, so that is what I would recommend. But we're just going to do this until we fill it all in. Now, another step that I forgot on this one, which may have been part of my problem in the future, you're going to see, is that when you transfer the rub-on transfers, you're supposed to take the top clear sheet and rub it across the top of the transfer to kind of seal it in. And I did not do that on this first DIY, so make sure you do that. And then I thought it'd be nice to paint the black posts here with a tan color to match. There's a little bit of beige in the rub-on transfer, and I thought it was nicer than the black. The black just felt a little harsh. So I taped off the bottom because I didn't want to get anything on my wood base because I loved that. And I'm just going and painting all of the black. I didn't do the big solid black rectangle there that you see, and I'll show you in the end what I ended up doing. But I made sure to get all of the sides. I wanted to make sure it looked good, from the back as well. And it took a couple coats, but the paint dried really quickly because it was a thin coat and it was on metal, and it just painted my goodness, it dried really quickly. So I did a couple coats, and then I have this blessed leather word. I can't remember if this was from Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby. I think it was Hobby Lobby in their fall stuff. I don't feel like blessed is just a fall word. So this tan was a perfect complement because it was similar to the color in the transfers. And I wanted it to just stand out a little bit. So I'm taking just a little bit of brown acrylic paint on a paintbrush, and I'm just kind of outlining it. And it wiped off really easily on the leather if I got it where it didn't need to be, the faux leather, pardon me. But I just used a little damp Q-tip to wipe that off. I could have used anything, but the damp Q-tip was small. So now we're going back here. I was letting the paint dry, so I'm just showing it to you in the order that I did it. And I just thought this was a really, really pretty complement to the flower transfer. And I'm using this glue. It's like a tacky glue, a crafter's glue. The glue is very thick. It always just clogs up the nozzle at the top, so I never use that. I always just apply with a paintbrush, and it's getting low, so I just dipped a popsicle stick in to get some out, and I'm painting it on with a little paintbrush. I wanted to do that as well because then you can spread it out so it doesn't ooze as much out of the sides, if that is making sense. But I did move quickly. I mean, this was sped up, but I moved quickly because I didn't want it to start drying on me. And we're just going to place that down and let that dry. And then I've just put a little bottle underneath that so that this could lay more flat. And I'm taking more of this glue, and I am just going to smear that across this sign. Once again, moving pretty quickly, making sure I get plenty of glue on the edges. And then we're going to go ahead and glue on our leather piece. Now, in this process, I got some glue on my hands. I tried to wipe them off really quick there with a baby wipe, but I think my hands might have been a little bit tacky. And as well, because I did not, like I said, it's called burnishing, I think, when you take the top clear sheet of the rub-on transfers and kind of seal in the transfer. There's a couple pieces of this transfer that kind of came off. You may or may not notice it. Like, you probably wouldn't notice it at first glance, but I think with me rubbing it, anyways, you can see a little bit in that pink flower at the top right. But all in all, I absolutely love how this came out, and I think these colors are really, really pretty for spring. For our next DIY, this little bucket was from the Dollar General. The regular price on it was $1, and I know I paid less than that. I don't remember if it was 50% off or more, but I will always grab those things when I can. So it's kind of cute as is, but I wanted it to go with everything else. I'm kind of making everything kind of go together because I'm going to probably put them in my house in the same spot. So I'm painting it with some Waverly chalk paint in white. I found 2 bottles that were just about empty in my craft stash. And so I put them in another container and watered it down a little bit because it was kind of thick. This is a little too watered down, so it was a little bit messy, but in the end it worked. Just try not to waste any paint, you know? I didn't realize I still had those because I bought a new one, which apparently is what I just keep doing. So I'm using my heat gun to dry it in between coats because I did a couple of coats. I did the top, the bottom, the rim, the inside, everything. And then I'm going to go in, this is the same beige color I used on the first DIY, and I'm going to paint with a small paintbrush the top rim and the bottom rim. I just thought that was a nice complementing color, and once again, kind of coordinates with the others that we're going to be doing. So the key here is to use a small paintbrush. Get yourself a paintbrush set. Dollar Tree has some, but also Walmart or Hobby Lobby. They're not expensive. For a few dollars, you can get a wide range of sizes, and it really makes all the difference in the world. For the top one, I did decide to put some painter's tape down. At the top, I just kind of was eyeballing it because I didn't want to go too far in. Not that it'll really be seen, but I did want it to look nice. And I did have to do a couple of coats of this. But once again, the paint dried really quickly, so it really was not a time-consuming task at all. This was done in really just a few minutes. So I just thought this little rim was a nice touch, a little detail, subtle, and not the typical that I always do with my colors. Having in this beige was really nice. So taking off the tape, and that definitely helped me keep the rest of the vase, bucket, clean, whatever. And then I'm using a couple of paint bottles to help me keep this still, and another part of that rub-on transfer. And I wasn't sure because if you can see the texture on this bucket is like ridges, rippled. So I didn't flatten it across the whole thing. I started in the middle and worked my way out, and I held it really firm with my hand. It transferred super easily, which is awesome, but that also means that if you move it, you usually kind of will lose some of the transfer. So I was just very careful, took my time. I can tell well, I don't know if you can tell, it looks like I'm pressing down really hard to hold it in place, and I was, but rubbing it on with the popsicle stick worked great. And then there I am using the top sheet to kind of seal it in. And then we're going to go ahead and Mod Podge this. I'm using a matte finish Mod Podge because that's the finish that I wanted. And I am going to do the inside and outside of this because I wanted to be able to put florals inside and not have the paint scrape out, just so that it wouldn't, it'd look nice longer. And so that's what I decided to do. And I was a good call because paint on metal sometimes scrapes off a little bit easier. So that's why I did that. And I just put some lamb's ear in this, and I thought this was really pretty, and it's going to be a great complement to that first sign that I already showed you. So for this other one, another Christmas clearance from Dollar General. I paid 25 cents for this, but there's lots of round signs at the Dollar Tree as well. I'm using my heat gun to take off this little holly berries because I'm going to put that in my Christmas DIY stash to use in the future. And the heat gun just warms up the glue, and I'm using that as well to get the sticker off the back. We're going to go ahead and just DIY the back of this sign. You could sand down the front if you wanted to, cover it with paper. You could DIY the front of it by painting it, however you want to do it. But I'm just going to use the back, and you can definitely finish off the front by painting it or covering it with some paper. And then I just sanded it a little bit to get the rest of the sticky residue off, and then used my little handy dandy vacuum to vacuum up any dust. And I'm going back in with that white paint. It is a little too watered down. It paints well, but it's a little bit messier. So I had to be careful of paint splatters. But I did a good coat, but as you can see, not a thorough coat because I wanted that chippy look. And these stencils are beautiful. They're from Hobby Lobby. They have really nice stencils. It's a 2-pack for $1.99. And of course, you can get their spring stuff 40% off or 50% off depending on when you go in. And we're just going to tape that down. And then I have these paints from HTV Ront. They sent me these back in December, November, and I just mixed them up to try to match that pink, that beautiful pink color from the rub-on transfers, because I want these to all be able to be displayed together. So I'm just using a stencil brush to apply that. Now with the word stencils, I was kind of holding down some of the stencil because I didn't want it to get picked up while I was stenciling, if that makes sense. But overall, I think their stencils are really nice. And then I'm using a little tiny paintbrush to fill in the gaps on the letters because I usually do that. I like that look better, but that's totally up to you. I missed it on the O. I filled it in some of them. I meant to leave one of those open, but not both of them that are. But you know what? It's fine. It's totally fine. And we're going to put our little hanger back in. And then we have this burlap ribbon from the Dollar Tree. It's this burlap and lace ribbon, really nice. And we're going to make a bow. Because it's only a one-sided ribbon, we're going to just make a loop here using finger protectors because the hot glue will go straight through that burlap ribbon. And then I'm going to cut a separate piece for the tails. And then I think I get a little out of frame here, but I fold them and dovetail the ends. And then I forgot to press record again when I did this part, but I took some jute twine and I tied it over the loop to make the bow portion, and then did another tie to add on the tails. And then I'm just trying to tie this tight here to really cinch it in. And then we'll cut off any excess twine. But this was just a good way to do it for this ribbon. It just didn't think it was going to look good if I tried to fold it or like tie a bow with it. So we're doing that. And then we're going to go ahead and hot glue this onto the top and just fuss with the bow. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just kind of, what do they say, zhuzh it. And yeah, good amount of hot glue right at the top. And that's why I put the hanger on first. This isn't going over that, but I just figured it'd be easy to apply it this way. And then the last little bit of that rub-on transfer was this large tan colored flower. And I thought this was the perfect addition to the bottom of the sign. And this transferred super easily. I mean, this is sped up, but it really transferred very, very easily. And once again, take that plastic sheet on top and rub that in. And then I thought that the bow needed a little something else. So I took a black button and used more of that pink paint to paint this. And this took a few coats and it still wasn't quite as bright as I wanted. I should have dug a little deeper to see if I could find a white button that would have been easier to paint, or I should have primed it with white paint. But hindsight's 20/20. I stuck it on a piece of tape just to kind of hold it still while I painted it. And I did multiple coats. I did pretty thick coats. I didn't care if you could see all of the little holes, but I thought a little more touch of pink was perfect. So I put that in the middle of our bow, and that was it for this little sign. Let me know what you think about this. I love it. I think it's super cute, and I had fun with those pretty floral rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree. All right, so this first one is really simple. I'm going to show you how I went about it because it took me a little bit to figure it out. I put a smaller vase instead of a bigger vase. I had covered it with tape just so that stuff wouldn't get inside of it. But then the shape of my vases made it too narrow to fit what I wanted to put in there. We're going to do like a vase filler with some flowers. So then I was like, well, here's some flowers. Maybe I'll just do it around it. Maybe I'll just put a little glass holder at the bottom. But then it was still too narrow for me to fit the eggs lower down because this vase curves in. So I had like the moss, then the eggs. I didn't like it. So here's what I did. And if you have different shaped vases, you might be able to do the vase in the center. But I just stuck these stems in, put in some moss from the Dollar Tree and some eggs. I think I picked these up on clearance from Hobby Lobby last year. And I just layered them in, and that was it. So I don't know, is this a DIY? I always say that it counts as a DIY because a DIY means you did it yourself. So I just put the stems in the center. This would be hard if you were using individual stems, but I had like a bouquet. I did actually end up switching out the florals in my home decor because I didn't love these ones. Felt like it was disproportionate, but a super easy DIY that you can do. For this next one, I have a calendar from the Dollar Tree, an old sign, I think from the Dollar Tree that I had previously used and taken apart, and then I had some scrapbook paper from Hobby Lobby. So I decided to cover mine with scrapbook paper. This is a really thick cardstock type scrapbook paper, but you could paint the sign. It just depends on what you're using as your base, but feel free to like use something you thrifted, something you found on clearance, maybe something in your home decor that you just don't like anymore, and instead of getting rid of it, you can repurpose it. But I'm going to just cut it down, and we're going to cover the front, and because the sides were that buffalo check, I'm actually going to cut down strips for all of the sides as well. And then I'm just going to put this on with a good old-fashioned glue stick. This did work really good. And this, like I said, this cardstock or this scrapbook paper is like more of a cardstock. It's a lot thicker, but I think you could use a regular like thinner scrapbook paper as well. Basically, we just need a nice clean base to get everything to to build on, to do the rest. I'm going to smooth that out really, really good and let it dry. It doesn't take a long time to dry, but you do want to let it, smooth out before, or I'm sorry, not smooth out. Smooth it out and let it dry before you go on. So I have this calendar page. I don't know what calendar this is from. It's from a couple years ago. And I thought this little bird nest sign or page would be really pretty for spring. So I'm going to cut this down. I just didn't want it to be the full front. I wanted the background to kind of frame it. And then I did use my paper cutter to get straighter lines. This is really another very, very simple DIY. And once I had it kind of the shape I wanted, I once again used the glue stick. Calendar pages are very thin, so you do want to be careful that you don't tear it. And I would be very careful using something like Mod Podge. You could, but be careful just because it's so thin. And we're just going to smooth that out. And I kind of went back and forth. You have a little bit of wiggle room time here, so I was able to pull it up. Sorry about my head in the way. Anyways, smooth it down really good, get out all of the air bubbles. And I thought about adding like a little bit more detail, but I just kept this one really simple. I thought sometimes you don't want all of your decor to be really busy. You want some simple pieces. All right, so up next we've got these mini frames from the Dollar Tree. They come in a 2-pack, and I am going to use 2 in this video. I wasn't sure at first exactly how I was going to do this. I've got these eggs that I picked up from Hobby Lobby on clearance at the end of the season. Love me some seasonal clearance. So I'd seen some different wreath ideas, and I was trying to recreate it. I didn't have anything that I was specifically mimicking, but I was just like, okay, is this going to look good? All right. So once I kind of was like, it will look good, I think I'm going to like this, I just kind of scattered them throughout. Of course, your color palette can be whatever you want it to be, but I love these colors because I use a lot of like that sagey green. I use particularly moss and celery from Waverly in my home decor, so these matched well. And I didn't do a particular pattern. I just wanted to mix it up a little bit. So I was like, okay, if you put the other frame or other wreath over top of it, that's going to close up. I just wanted to make sure that was going to work okay. And so what I did was put some of this moss. I've been having a hard time finding like the moss stuff. Does anyone know what I mean by moss? There's different kinds of moss, but this is the one I'm using. I'm just going to spread it out. One more that was more beige, I might have liked a little bit better for this particular DIY. So I'm making this not permanent. I'm filling this with the moss, and we're going to layer it. Now, it will make a little bit of a mess. My suggestion would be, if you wanted to do this, I thought this like totally afterwards, so I wasn't going to redo it, but I would line one of the wreaths with some burlap ribbon, like the inside of it where kind of like, there's a little cubby there. And then I would hot glue the moss to the, do you like that flipping technique? I'd hot glue the moss to the burlap, and that way if the burlap, you wouldn't really see it, and it would be fine if you saw a little bit of it. And then you could even hot glue the eggs on if you wanted, but you wouldn't need to. That would have been a really good idea because it would make it more permanent, but not really, because you could just pull the ribbon out if you wanted to redo it. But I did this very quick and so that I could take it apart, because I do that a lot with my seasonal decor. I use it for a little bit and then I take it apart. I'm just using some floral wire to attach these together, and then you can put floral wire or a piece of twine or something on the back to use as a hanger. And then I'm just giving it a little bit of a haircut, and I'm just taking burlap ribbon to make a very, very simple bow. I just wanted a small bow on the wreath. It's not necessary to even have a bow, but I just folded it over, pinched it, and then I just used some twine. This is actually a few pieces of smaller twine in a scrap bag I had, and so I just tied that down, fluffed it up. We went very, very basic on this. So I wanted to just make sure, okay, is this the right size or placement? I don't even think, I didn't even put tails on this bow. And I just used the twine to tie it on to the wreath, but feel free to use hot glue. Once again, I was just making this something that could easily be taken apart, but I thought this was really cute. It's a mini wreath, so I wouldn't necessarily put it on a front door, but I thought it was super cute. For our next DIY, I had it in my mind that I wanted to make a bird's nest, and I hadn't really thought about how exactly I was going to do that. But then I saw Rebecca Virginia, that's her channel, She recently made one, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try your method. So I'll have her video linked for you if you want to check it out. But she used a brown paper bag as like the base. So I cut some of the top off, and then I'm rolling it down, and I'm just kind of shaping it a little bit. This is just going to give us a base to attach our moss to. So I'm using some Mod Podge, whatever one I just had on hand. I used a lot more Mod Podge than you have here. This is messy, okay? This is not a neat project. I'm once again not using my favorite moss, but it's what I could find. Actually, I used two different kinds here. The one I use in the end is the one I really wanted to use, but I did that on the top. And I'm just covering it in Mod Podge. That's right, we're just gonna soak it up. Honestly, because I'm using so much Mod Podge, I wish I had done like the homemade version of Mod Podge, which is like Elmer's glue, watered down. I don't know if it's a 50-50 ratio, you could look it up. Just because I use so much Mod Podge, and that would have been cheaper. But I'm just going to keep doing it and soaking it up with the Mod Podge because you want it to stick. And I'm just shaping a nest. And we're just going to shape it and fluff it. And I use two different types of moss, and we're just going to get it really wet. Now, I let this dry for a while. I let it dry this way, and then I flipped it over and did let the bottom dry as well. And then I just put it on a little candle holder, put a couple eggs in it. I thought this was really cute. I wanted to put this in a lantern, but it didn't fit my mini lantern, so I'll just use it on a shelf. For this DIY, I have a sign that I picked up. I don't even remember where, but I picked up stuff at the thrift store or on clearance after holidays, and they're easy to make over. So I just sanded that down a little bit, gave it a coat of a Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and then I pulled out some stamps and the stamp block, stamp ink pad, all the things that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and I'm trying to experiment with them. So I'm using the little stamp block to grab these words. It says, "Have a nice day." My Dollar Tree only had a couple different colors of ink pads, so I just grabbed the black and I figured it would be a good place to start. And I'm just going to use a baby wipe to clean up any edges where any ink may have gotten so I didn't accidentally transfer that. We're going to put this in the bottom right corner of our little block sign. And this worked very well. I just was, careful with it and make sure to get a good press down, and I thought it came out nice. So, clean off the stamp, always clean it off right away. And then I have these flower stickers. These were from a journaling type group class thing that I went to, and there was some things left over, and I just had them in my stash. So just peel that off and put that on. That is it. Super simple, nothing complicated here. But I love the colors of these. I thought it was perfect for springtime. I love the violet and the purple and the blues. And anyways, I love how that came out. The next one is another block of wood. I don't know where this came from. I painted it white or whitewashed it white, or maybe it came that color. I honestly don't remember, but it's just a wood block. And then I have these colors from HTV Ront. They're like blues and purples. And this stencil set from Hobby Lobby. Great price on them. You can always get those seasonal ones at least 50% off. And there was 2 full-size stencils, and we're only using part of one of them. So I'm putting a little bit of painter's tape on the edge. I'm going to do the butterfly on this sideways so the edges won't be on all of it. That makes sense. So I'm wanting to make sure I just put a little painter's tape so that no paint kind of got down on the side there. And we're going to stencil this. What I'm doing, I'm trying to do like a fade effect. So I'm trying to do like darker blue and then moving it into purple. It's a very bluish purple. I was trying to kind of coordinate the colors from the first DIY. So that was kind of like the inspiration for the color palette. These paints are acrylic paints from HTV Ront that they sent me, and they are amazingly pigmented, like super pigmented. But with a stencil, I'm just using a stencil brush from the Dollar Tree. And of course, you don't want to have too much paint on your paintbrush so you don't have bleed through. So that's why you see me dabbing it off on a paper towel. And I'm mixing the colors. So I start with like a darker blue, and then I mix it with a little bit of other blue, and then I go to add some more purple, all with the same paintbrush. I didn't change it out in between because I did want that blending. And then I did go in with the little paintbrush and touched up a couple areas and added in a little bit more purple towards the center. Once it's completely dry obviously here, I did sand it down to rough it up. That also faded it just a little bit. That's obviously going to be your, to your taste. But I love how this one came out. I think the colors are really rich and pretty. It's kind of hard to see in this lighting how the center is a little bit more purple, but it is. And I loved how this one came out. Super simple. For this next one, I have this little mini cutting board that I had previously DIY'd, and I kind of just sanded that down to start over. We're going to give this a couple of coats of white Waverly chalk paint here in the center, and I'm just trying to stay off of, just stay on the center part, but we are going to go ahead and dry brush across the whole thing. So I'm going to wipe off any excess paint from my paintbrush, and I am going to do a little bit of a dry brush around the whole thing. I just wanted to lighten it up for this one. I like the color of that wood, but for these DIYs, I didn't want that richer, darker color. So I did dry that with my heat gun, and I did a second coat on the front there just to make sure that I had really good coverage. And then I'm going to go in with those same paint colors from the last DIY and another stencil from that same stencil set from Hobby Lobby. And I'm kind of just doing the same thing. I'm just doing varying shades, kind of working my way to the inside, blending the colors, and just kind of doing what I feel. I did tape off a good amount of this stencil because one, I didn't want to use all of it, and then the leaves I did want to go in with some green. So I did that and just kind of took my time here because I really had to hold the stencil down. There wasn't really a good way for me to tape it down. And even if I do, I usually try to tape it down in the center or hold it down in the center while I'm doing the stenciling. So now you can see I started peeling off the tape where the leaves were. I'm using a broken paintbrush. When I went to use it, the handle fell off, and I was like, well, I'm already in this. I got to hold this, down. So this paintbrush was not super great that I used for the green here, but I wanted a smaller one, and my stencil brush was a little too big. So once it was all dry, I went in with a fine tip paintbrush and some white paint and just touched up some of those areas. And then once it was all dry, I did sand it down again. Like I did the other DIY, just because that's what I like. You do what you like. But we're just going to sand that down and wipe off all of the dust. And here's how this one came out. It looks really cute, just kind of layered in a tiered tray. And I love this color palette for spring. For this DIY, I have this mini picture frame that I picked up at a thrift store. The tag says 49 cents, so I definitely didn't pay more than that, but it might have only been 25 cents. So I wanted to take the insides out, and then I realized this frame, the back is attached. So I couldn't remove it, but I didn't want to get any paint on it. So I just covered the plastic part, or what would in some frames would be glass, but this one was just plastic. I covered that with painter's tape and then just put it back in so that I could paint freely here. And I'm using a stencil brush to get into the grooves, but we're going to do more of that purpley color that I did. And I did a couple of coats of this. The pearly color was pretty, but I wanted to go for something more vibrant. And then I took a small paintbrush and I did the inside and outside of the frame. That did take a couple of coats as well because it wasn't that texture. It took like 3 coats. It was just a little bit more glossy. And then I did use that little paintbrush to get in between all of those little beads as well because I just wanted a really nice, vibrant color. That's just what I was going for. For the inside of the frame, we're going to go back to our stamps, using another stamp set from the Dollar Tree. You could also use like a piece of scrapbook paper that had a really pretty image, or like a calendar page, something like that. Even something from like a magazine or something. But I picked out this pretty floral piece that I thought, well, it fit well in there as far as the size of the frame, and I just thought it went well with what I was doing. I wasn't sure. I felt like the ink wasn't coming off as good on it this time, so I did a test on a piece of paper, and it worked just fine. It's not incredibly vibrant. I don't know what I should do to the ink pad. I think I'm supposed to store the ink pad upside down, actually. I need to go do that. I think that would help. But once again, I cleaned off the edge and just stamped this. I just used a piece of paper that was inside the frame, but You could, of course, just cut a piece of scrap paper down if you needed to, or computer paper. And we're just going to put that back in the frame, get that nice and situated, and that is it. These little frames are easy to find at thrift stores, but Dollar Tree has them too. But I love how bright and colorful, and by nature, like it just kind of naturally had different shades in the frame because some of it got a little bit heavier, but I love that look. For this DIY, I've got this little ceramic succulent plant from the Dollar General. They're $1, but I picked a bunch of them up when they were on clearance. I probably paid 10 or 20 cents. So we're going to add a little something to the planter, and I've got these pearly beads, pearly stickers from the Dollar Tree. I have several different sizes and stuff in my stash, and I am really trying to work through my stash. I have a lot of little things like this, little embellishment pieces, and yeah, I'm just trying to work through them. So this goes in and out of focus because, as you can see, my face, my glasses keep popping in, and the camera didn't know what to focus on. But I'm cutting it down strips of this, and I have started keeping a little pair of tweezers in my crafting stash, and it came in very handy for these to help hold them in place. And for this particular strip, the way the beads were spaced out, it didn't work for me to just wrap it around the whole thing. So I had to do one strip per side of the planter, just because of how they were spaced out and the side, the size of the sides of the planter, the size of the sides of the planter. And then I'm just going to do a really good coat with this pretty paint. Once again, I have so many colors of paint, and I don't do a lot of color in my decor, but I think it's fun to incorporate, especially for spring. So I'm trying to use up what I've got. And so I'm just going over this. I did do a couple coats. You can do it. See, I'm doing a nice little coat at the top of the planter. This is just a cement material. It soaks up the paint really well. And but I did do 2 coats and really just covered those beads across the top. And that did not take very long to dry in between, but use your heat gun or a hair dryer if you need to, or just wait. Time also does the trick. And then I have some white paint that I had watered down. I'm just trying to use up some old white paint. So I'm just using a watered down one here. We're going to go across the beads and then dab it with a paper towel just to highlight them a little bit. And then I went around the edges of each corner, I guess. And then I did go around the flat surfaces of all of this as well, just very lightly, just to give it a little bit more depth and interest instead of it just being a flat color. And I just kind of went until I liked it. And then I did go in with a coat of Mod Podge on this. I don't know, the material, it may have not been super necessary, but it did probably help keep the paint on the beads at the top. And that was all there is to this one. Just gave the little pot a makeover, but I love this color and I like how this came out. This DIY is using what was a cream colored ceramic plate on a stand from Dollar Tree, and I'd previously painted it and used it in a DIY, so it was originally like a cream colored. But we're just going to give this a couple coats of a Waverly chalk paint in white and let that dry. And then I have these mini foam carrots from the Dollar Tree. Now, the orange it came in was a little too vibrant for me. Now I understand that this more corally color is less realistic, but this is what I went with. So I gave it 3 of those carrots a coat of paint, and we're just going to glue them onto this little ceramic plate just to make a cute spring or Easter little display. These wood bunnies with the little cottontails are also from the Dollar Tree, came in a multi-pack. They had them this year, but I have them left over from last year or maybe the year before. Same thing with the carrots. And Hobby Lobby has similar things too. Probably other craft stores, I just don't get to a lot of the other ones. And so I had previously figured out how these would, be spaced. And so just 3 carrots and 2 bunnies with a little bit of hot glue. And I thought this was just a cute, fun little sign. And I love that it has a little kickstand to it because I don't have to lean it up against anything. But yeah, that is all for this one. For this next DIY, this is a tag from probably Dollar General. Once again, I'm not sure. I buy a lot of my stuff at Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Hobby Lobby clearance, Dollar General clearance, and thrift stores. Those are my main areas. So I wanted to take this paper off, and so I did wet it down, although that didn't really do much, but I did find like a dry pocket. And once I got my little scraper underneath that, most of that came right off, and then I just continued using a damp paper towel to wet down the rest of it and scraped it and then sanded it to get the remaining off. Did not take much work with the sandpaper. And we're going to go back in again with this pretty coral color. I'm making some DIYs that kind of go together in case you didn't notice my little themes. And doing a smooth coat on the top and then a kind of a light coat on the edges. It's not like fully covered, but I knew I wasn't going to keep the paint fully off the edges, that some was going to drip down, so I figured might as well just go for it. And that did take 2 coats. And then once again from my stash, but these are from the Dollar Tree, these gold butterflies are a rub-on transfer. These are tough. The gold ones at Dollar Tree stink. You can see I already messed up there. The transfer in the beginning when I didn't want it to stuck really, really easily, but then struggled to transfer. And then the transfer sheet itself was not really sticky, so that's why it shifted so easily, so I really had to hold it still. I'm going to make it work. I'm using up the rest of these transfers, but I do not recommend the gold rub-on transfers from the Dollar Tree. They're just not their best ones. So I sped this up, but I did also leave a lot of this in here for you to see that it was a struggle. One thing that I try to do is go for a little bit more rustic look, so it doesn't matter that it's not perfect. Now this middle one here, this is not a transfer. This is a sticker, a wall sticker from Dollar Tree. It's kind of in their usually in their frame home decor area. So I did one of those and then 2 of these awful transfers. But once again, I'm using up what's in my stash. I am determined. And I thought the butterflies, of course, fun for spring. But then this is a little bit more vibrant, plus my transfers struggled a little bit. So I'm going to rough this up with a little bit of sandpaper. I'm also going to sand down the edges. Here is what I'm using a nail file for. But I just sanded across the whole thing to rough it up and make everything, make your accidents look more on purpose. And then I'm going in more with that watered down paint. Doesn't need to be watered down, mine just is. I did a dry brush with that, so I put on my paintbrush and then wiped a lot of that off. And then once that was dry, we're going to seal that in with some Mod Podge, and just to kind of keep those stickers in place. And that'll also tone down the shininess of the gold sticker a little bit as well. And then I'm just going to thread the twine that was already on it back through, just for, I don't know, decor purposes. You could also add on some beads there, or put this at the end of a beaded garland. That would also be really pretty. But I was happy how this one came out in the end. So I've been trying to really work through my stash, and that includes paints. I've got so many paints, and I know that you can mix colors, but recently a friend mentioned to me, she's like, why don't you just mix them, and maybe you could be able to find more uses for them, because I have so many colors. And I was like, that's a really good idea. So I'm mixing together, just playing, scientist here. Is that science? I guess that's not really science. I don't know. But I'm mixing together a few shades of green along with some beige and coming up with a really pretty green color that I'm going to use on a lot of my DIYs. So I have this sign. I don't remember where it's from, but it's probably from Hobby Lobby is my guess, that I previously DIY'd, you can see, but I've sanded it down. But just grab a sign, any sign from the Dollar Tree, thrift store. If you have old home decor in your home that you're no longer loving as much, instead of donating it, you can give it a makeover. It's a really great way to repurpose things and helps you get some new, fresh decor on a budget without having to spend sometimes any money, depending on what you already might have on hand. So I'm going to give that a couple of good coats, and then I'm going to seal my project with some DIY clear wax. You could also seal it with Mod Podge or not seal it at all. I don't know, some projects require it more than others, but just to be on the safe side, I did go ahead and do that. And I'm just applying it with an old t-shirt, a scrap from a t-shirt. So just something that doesn't have lint on it. And we're just going to wipe that on, and then you can just kind of buff it in is how I do it. I think I do it right. Anyways, so once that is done, I'm cutting down a popsicle stick and I'm going to hot glue a couple of these together. I was looking for something to just give a little bit of depth for the piece that we're going to attach on. I didn't want it to be flat. This is a pretty piece from Hobby Lobby. They've got lots of animals in different shapes and had a few with some scriptures on them. And I thought this was really pretty for spring. And I just didn't want it flat on the box or on the sign, but I didn't want it super, super elevated. So I just went through my stash and decided on a couple of, pieces of popsicle sticks. And then I just glued that on there. And that was all for this one, but I thought it came out really pretty. Let me know what you think. All right, up next I have this metal bucket. Dollar Tree has these, Walmart has these. I picked mine up from the Dollar General and I probably paid less than $1 for it. I'm assuming I get a lot of my stuff from Dollar General when it's marked down on clearance. All of the time, do not snooze on your Dollar Generals if you have them near you. But I'm just using my heat gun to take off the sticker, kind of soften off the adhesive. And then I'm just using some orange essential oil to get the sticky off. And then I did clean it with a baby wipe so that there wasn't any residue left behind from the oil. And then we're going to go in and give this a couple coats of the color green. I'm going to do the whole thing inside, bottom. The inside I didn't do as good of coverage, but sometimes I don't know exactly what I'm going to end up putting in it, and I don't want you to be able to see the different color. Although it's not really like it's a bad color if the inside, I suppose, was this cream color. But I also did paint off the black rim, so some green did get down inside. Anyways, give that a couple coats. And then I have this gold butterfly sticker. This is from the wall decor, like wall stickers from the Dollar Tree. And because my piece here has like ridges in it, I wanted to just kind of start from the center and work the way out to make sure that I was able to press the sticker into the ridges. I was afraid that if I had to pull it up and reposition it with the paint being on like tin, that I would probably pull up the paint. So I wanted to get it right the first time. And then I'm going in with a chippy brush and some paint, just very little on my brush. And I kind of went heavier around the top rim, but didn't paint it a solid white. And then went across the whole thing. This kind of blends the sticker in a little bit. It also just gave a look that I like. It's a little less crisp, but I felt like the edges of the sticker got blended in a little bit more. And then I'm sealing this once again with a DIY clear wax. You can see the bottom of the tin there is not as well painted. I did seal that though because I didn't want any floral stems that I might put in there to chip away at the paint. But just to give that a coat of whatever you want to seal it, and then I put in just another potted plant that I had. But I love how this one came out, really simple and an easy makeover. This DIY, we're starting with a little pedestal. This was from Hobby Lobby from 4th of July, maybe a couple years ago. I picked up a couple of them. You can see it has a little chip on it, and it was after season, so they were 90% off. I think I paid like 20 cents for this and several others that I got. So I did put a coat of Mod Podge underneath just to help. I don't know, I feel like some surfaces it helps paint adhere to it better. And then I gave this a couple coats of this pretty green color. Obviously, you do yours in any colors that you want. But I just gave that, I think it only took two coats. And then we're going to seal this in once again with that DIY clear wax. Definitely seal it. If you're painting it on metal or like ceramics, seal it up with something. If you want to just use Mod Podge, that's fine. And then this is just a file folder that I have in my craft stash because actually the other side is pretty pretty. It's a little greenery pattern. But anyways, I just cut out a piece of that to fit on top of the pedestal, and we're going to make a little scene and we're going to add a cloche. So I'm just hot gluing one of these moss bunnies from the Dollar Tree, and then I'm adding in some hot glue and some floral moss from, I don't know if it's called floral moss, I think it is, from the Dollar Tree. And you don't really need a lot of this because I didn't need it to be like high up and bulky, but I just wanted to cover that cardboard. So I did go to all of the edges. You could also probably just do this with like Mod Podge or Elmer's glue instead of hot glue, but hot glue gun was out. And I could even just really cover the edges almost with the dust of this moss. I just didn't need a lot of it. I just cut this down to fit on top of that pedestal so that it would be, not hanging over the edges at all. And then we're going to place that on top. And then I have this cloche. This is just the top of the cloche. So I'm going to glue that down. You can see. This is the top of a cloche from the Dollar Tree. It comes with a base that I used at some point for something. So I just have the top of it and it fit well on top here. And then I wanted something for on top of the cloche. So I took a bead I had. I did fill in with hot glue. That doesn't work as good as filler, like a spackling, but it worked good enough. Painted it and then hot glue that on top. I did not secure this to the pedestal. You could certainly do that with some glue, but I just set it on top and I thought this was super cute for spring. We've got some more Dollar General items here. This was something I picked up for only 10 cents after Valentine's Day. And I was like, this is a great base for a little sign. So we're just going to take off our sticker. And then I'm also removing some hot glue here to pull this embellishment off. And one thing that's great, but I have to keep in mind with Dollar General items is they tend to be put on better than the Dollar Tree. So here I realized that there was actually nails holding that heart in. And so I used some pliers to try to pull them out. I ended up actually hammering them down in because I just could not get them to be pulled out. And I sanded it down just to give it a little bit easier to cover all of that writing and gave it a couple coats of Waverly chalk paint in the color white. And then I'm dry brushing with that green color just to kind of bring all of the DIYs together just a little bit to add a little bit more depth so it wasn't like a flat white. And then I have this pretty little beaded garland from the Dollar Tree. We're going to cut off our little chick here as an embellishment. I'm also going to use the ribbon from the tassel because that goes well. And actually it was one of these white beads that I used on top of the cloche in the last DIY. Also from Dollar Tree, it's Crafter Square here. I've got these little wood word stickers and they have stickiness on them so you don't have to glue them. They are fragile. As you can see, I broke that one, but I was able to piece it back together when I put it on and you can't even tell. So I put on Hello Friend because when I saw this cute little chick, I was like, I don't know. I feel like the chick is just saying hello friend. I don't know. Maybe that's corny. Whatever. Do what you like with your DIYs and I'll do what I like with mine. And then I'm just using that ribbon and tying a simple little bow. I'm going to keep it pretty small, but I thought just to tie in a little bit more of that yellow. And obviously it matched well because it came from the same piece. So I'm just trimming down the ends of the bow at an angle and we're going to hot glue that into the other corner. It is not perfectly centered in it. That's kind of on purpose because the chick is obviously much bigger, but I thought this sign was really cute. It would look great on a tiered tray. For this DIY, I'm going to start with these little chalkboard signs. They are in a clothespin. They come from the Dollar Tree, but I did find one that was already in my stash that I had previously used that I was no longer using. So I'm just going to use that one and I'm going to paint it white and give that 2 coats. Let that dry. These stamps, the ink, this little stamping block, these are all from the Dollar Tree if you can find them. I'm not convinced that the ink pads are awesome. I don't know if I'm just not great at it. I'm still kind of working on my stamping game. But the stamps themselves I think work pretty great. And I'm just stamping on the word garden. I like to quickly clean off with a baby wipe or a wet paper towel. Just makes it easier to clean it if you do it immediately. These wood flowers are from the Dollar Tree. And once again, I'm trying filling in the holes with hot glue. I see people do this. I don't like it. I think I'll go back to using like spackling or wood filler, but I don't know. I just don't think it does as good a job. But I've got these flowers and I'm going to paint the back side of them. And I just painted, you know, kind of what you'd expect. The stems and leaves are in green. And I painted the top in white. And this is when I realized it's kind of hard to see here, but the hole was just not being covered up well. So what I decided to do was go back in with some white paint and mix it in with some baking soda. This paint here is a watered down white paint. If you've been watching my videos, you've seen me use this a lot. I've been trying to work through it, not waste anything. The baking soda gives just a little bit of texture. It gives enough texture. I used an old paintbrush because it does kind of mess with your paintbrush a little bit. But it gave me just enough texture. I liked the different textures because I think that adds some depth to your projects, but it also helped cover up that hole on top perfectly. You could not see where the hot glue was. Once that dried, I decided to go in with a pouncer brush and a little bit of yellow and add a little center and kind of make these look like a daisy. For the base of this project, I have this sign from the Dollar Tree, and we're just going to start by adding some details to the handle. So I'm going to use some of those beads from that beaded garland and thread them on. I tried just moistening the twine with like a baby wipe, and that did work, but for this final piece of threading it back through, I had to just put the tape on, use the tape trick to thread that back through and tie another knot. When I cut it earlier, I knew I wasn't going to be losing much of the length, so it worked out fine. And then we're going to attach these to the sign with some hot glue. I accidentally put a little too much in the stem, so it oozed out, and I just used a little tool to kind of scrape that out and got the other one put on. And then we're going to take our little garden sign and put that one at the top. So I thought that looked really cute, got that nice and centered. And I just have this leaning up here, but this is going to be really cute, hung up on a little hook as well. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out so much. For this DIY, I have a sign. Once again, you can see that I've DIY'd with it before. Pretty sure, yeah, this was from the Dollar Tree. And we're going to use more of that. It's just like a stiff cardboard, but it's a file folder. And I'm going to hot glue that down here just to cover that up, give it a nice base. But then we're going to cover it up some more. So I don't know if that was necessary. But I have more moss bunnies from the Dollar Tree. One of those that it looked like I'd already used it before on a previous DIY. I do that a lot because I have lots of DIYs. But we're going to make ourselves a little scene of some bunnies in a carrot patch. This is a little bit more whimsical than I normally go with my projects, but I like to create a variety even if I don't necessarily decorate with everything myself, because it's still fun to create and I like to give you guys some ideas. So I'm using hot glue and attaching this floral moss all over. Here I am just kind of scraping off the top layer of it because once again, I did not need this like high and bulky. So I just went around and kind of, evened it out a little bit. And then I have these foam carrots from the Dollar Tree, and I just cut them down at different heights and then hot glue them into the moss. So I was trying to make it look like a carrot patch, like these are growing out of the ground and the bunnies are coming along for a snack. I thought this was cute. Like I said, a little more whimsical than I normally do, but I had a lot of fun creating it. And then I'm just trimming off the edges. I probably should have kept a little bit of moss away from the edges because it was a little tight fitting this back in the frame, but it did fit in the frame. I was able to, secure it back on, no problem, but you might want to just keep that in mind. And I just push that in and close down those little tabs again to hold it securely. And I thought this was really cute. I'll probably put this on a tiered tray, but let me know what you think about this one down below.
If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out so much. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on my future budget-friendly DIYs. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.